man, that intro gets me pumped up every time. My
Yes.
dude DB Rook. Oh man, every time. I'm a metalhead. So anyway, oh my gosh. So if the guys and gals who are watching don't know this, but look, I have been the worst, and there's other people who know this too, at getting things scheduled lately. So I'm so happy to have RH Snow here. How are you tonight?
I am absolutely fabulous. My storm that I was watching sort of died, which I'm really happy because
That's good.
yes, I'm the lead storm spotter for Limestone County, Texas. I'm the Skywarn coordinator and the Aries coordinator as well, which makes me a ham radio operator. So I have all my gear here tonight. If I have to go live, you can actually watch while we do storms. Look, I got a badge. This is gotten for me. This is from my fire department, and I'm Charlotte 2220. I've got my radio, my fire radio, so that way I can play with it. So if something happens, you'll be like, "We got a storm coming in," and then people will be like, "Oh no, what are we gonna do?" And then I'll be like, "Let's go get it." And then I send my notes out, and then people go out and they all find the storms for me. And then National Weather Service says, "Good job, WeatherNet." And I'm like, "Thank you so much." And then all my party people have a party time.
That's awesome. So my dad was a volunteer firefighter for like 10 years, paramedic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I didn't say that backstage because I wanted to talk about it live. But yeah, I remember like waiting.
So cool.
Yeah. So like waiting next to the radio, and I was actually in the middle of a couple runs with them to this corn silo, which are very, very dry. They catch fire very quickly. Yeah, so I was on a couple runs with him. So I think that's cool. So what do you do exactly? You kind of just wait for something to happen, or?
Well, no, I've actually helped found my fire department, Shiloh Volunteer Fire Department. I actually helped start it with the real heroes, of course, on those are the men and women who helped us found it, because it's not just one person that ever does it. And so we started for our little community. Limestone County's been fantastic to us. And so I was a firefighter for about 10, 12 years. Also was a EMT basic as well. And got my ham radio certification. I got my license. I'm a technician. And so I started Aries as well. And I also started my WeatherNet, which is my Skywarn coordinator. So out of this one little department, we did all of these things. And so when I became too sick to go out and do the fires anymore, my husband's the fire chief, and he's also a little preacher. And so he's like, "You can't do this," because I started like having heart problems. And he's like, "You can't do this anymore." And he made those little rah noises at me because I really don't want to be that firefighter. And I was like, no, I can do it. And then one day I was running, trying to catch up with the fire. We had a big old fire, and it was out there in some hayfield. And my fellow volunteer firefighters were on another truck over there from Mejia district, and they're rolling and they're holding out their hands. So I'm running after that truck. And I don't know if you've ever seen King of the Hill, where there's Bobby Hill, and he's running after the truck when the snow is falling. And it's like, slow down, Jimmy Jack, just stop. I was just, and I was like, I never had that problem before. I've always been a really active person. And I was like, dude, I'm fixing to make not just me be seen on scene. They're going to be seen on scene, where literally you have an entire truck of people trying to help me. And that was the day I knew I cannot do that anymore. So I stopped doing my firefighting, and I let my cert go on my EMT, because I have a duty to act. And I told my husband, I said, as long as I have this cert, you're going to see me down the road. If I got a wreck, so he's like, "Well, you ain't going to carry that cert then." And I was like, I understood, because you don't want somebody just, it looks bad when somebody just dies right across your patient, like they're doing CPR and suddenly you have to do CPR on the person that was doing CPR. That's a bad thing. You don't want it. So I just said, okay, I'll let it go. So I still do the volunteer Skywarn, and I do the coordination for WeatherNet. And I love my peeps. If I have any of them here, I actually had the beams crossed the other day. I was so excited. One of my people that I work with on WeatherNet, I don't really put my face out there. They just know it's WeatherNet, and you try to keep it that way. You're a public servant, you do it. But he knows me, and he was talking to me, and I sent my email over to him, and it had my SIG on it, and it was from the book. And he goes, "Holy," and then he says a word with SH on it. "Holy, you're World Watcher of the Damned." And I was like,
oh, that's cool. So somebody recognized it.
That's one of my people recognized me. And I was like, I try to sort of keep my lives apart. And he was like, "No, I read the book and it was good." And I was like, this is so cool. And I got really excited. So I was like so happy.
And you've got a lot of them.
Oh, really? Yeah, I already got a whole series that was finished.
Yeah.
And part of this whole thing started because I've got 6 books and it's a whole series already ready to go. And then I'm 3 books into the next series. I've got one of them published and I've got 2 that had just twinned itself. And all of a sudden I had 2 books. And I was like, holy cow, this isn't just 1 book, it's 2. So now it's 2 books and I'm working on them side by side. And I'll have Caballeros del Camino come out in the summer. And then Hellbilly Highway will come out in the fall.
That's awesome.
By Christmas, we hope. I hope it's Christmas.
All right. Well, that's awesome. I want to shout out some people real quick. We've got some wonderful people. Tim, we've got 2 Tims up in here. Tim McKay, Tim Wolf, Savage Brewski. We've got Brian McCoppin. And then, man, thank you so much, John. We were talking about you before we come on here. Thank you so much for that, man. I really appreciate you.
Thanks.
And he's been looking forward to us. In fact, he was the one that's like, you have to have, and that's when I reached out to you.
He was so adorable. That's such a sweet boy. I love you, John. I love all of my people out there. I see you and you and you and you and you. I love you too.
Yeah, Matt, he always has these wonderful questions. He's done a little research. That's what he does for a living. He says, where do you enjoy performing more, Florist Country Store or the Broken Spoke?
Holy cow, did you?
Right? I knew it was going to be good.
Oh my gosh, Matt, you know about Wayne Hancock. I'm so excited. So that's my 3rd persona is Rebecca Hancock Snow. That's what the RH is for. I love both of them. I'm going to be really honest. Now, Broken Spoke is an absolute treasure. It's been there. And I think they said they were just closing down. So I do sing honky tonk singing also. And most people don't know that. And so I sang a couple with Wayne, and I love my little brother so much, and he is such a fantastic guy and has so many fans. And so I would say Flores Country Store for the intimacy of the floor. It is so, that venue, when you go in, it's so historic. And I lived in Helotes, Texas as a child. So, and I know Lisa and the family. And so to go there and to sing at Flores was just incredible. It's such a small and intimate venue, but the Broken Spoke has so much history on it. It's almost like being in Armadillo World. If you go to Austin, you go to Broken Spoke. And I think that they closed down now. I was just trying to find out if they were going to or if they stayed alive. So if anybody knows that the Broken Spoke is still open, I actually did do a secret video that I did that had about the Continental Club. And I sung at the Continental Club too, along with Antone's and a couple of other places. And what a lot of people don't know is that if you look up, and this is the only thing that people may know me from. If you look up Top 100 Women in Blues, I'm on there.
Oh, that's awesome.
And from it's one song, and all that glory goes to Jesus Christ and Wayne's band. Wayne has a fantastic band at the time. Bob was on trombone, and we cut that track. I think it was 2 takes and did it. And Summertime it's absolutely one of my favorite ones. And I've sung that all over Austin and a lot of Texas. And so I have to say I am a fan of both. I know that sounds wishy-washy. For intimacy, it's Flores. For the history, it'll be the Broken Spoke. But both of them are
very cool. So you've entertained and like to be creative your whole life then. That's really incredible.
Thank you.
Where did you, I'll start off with this. I always kind of try to start off at the beginning. Where did you find, I mean, you have lots of loves, I can see that, but where for literature did you find your love particularly?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So my parents loved books. I'll probably have 1,000, 1,500 books in this house. And that doesn't sound like too much to some people, but to me, it's a lot. And I had way more than that. I'm a book collector. My family history, part of this is related to my family history. We started talking before, and I'll just continue this. I'm old. A lot of y'all know that. Hi. I'm really old. I mean, y'all don't realize I'm 61 years old. I'm this many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's one.
I was like, you're lying.
No, it's for real. And my dad was born in 1923. He was a World War II veteran.
Oh, wow.
His father before him was born in 1881. He was actually a doctor at the turn of the century. And my grandfather fought in the Civil War. Great-grandfather, fought in the Civil War. So I have this really weird dichotomy. I have been raised by people who could touch people who fought in the Civil War. And so my whole worldview is different. So I had a very old collection of books. I read a lot of Dickinson. Mark Twain. And I love Mark Twain. He is a sci-fi writer. Read Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. That is a sci-fi book. It is a fantasy book. It is incredible. If you get a chance to do it. I loved, and I started off reading those. Those are the ones that we had, the classics, King Arthur's, A Round Table, and Robert Louis Stevenson. These authors, Dickens, Stevenson, and Mark Twain, probably formed the core of my childhood interaction. Then as I got into middle school, I started reading Tolkien and Ray Bradbury, who's huge. And I would read them side by side. I didn't really pick any one genre. So Isaac Asimov and Jack Vance becomes one that I read as a later date with Dying Earth. Everybody who knows me just knows me. I rave about Dying Earth. I loved H.G. Wells. And I was a voracious reader. And so as I read all these things, it gets this weird mishmash going of writers. And then I discovered Dragon Riders of Pern with Anna McCaffrey. And I started reading all these books. One of my greatest loves is Howard. And I love Robert E. Howard because he, to me, he exemplifies that generation of writers. And I know that some people like him because he's too over the top or it's too masculine. I love that feeling that Howard gets. And it's not just in his Conan books. When you also look at Kane and you look at his other characters, but especially his Westerns, and people don't read his Westerns enough. His Westerns, the voice is so unique. It is just hilarious. The way he writes, the way he puts the dialogue together, it's almost pure dialogue. There's hardly any action sometimes, but there's just an enormous amount of dialogue in his Westerns. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have action, but it's the characterization that just pulls it together. So when I have all of these guys and gals coming together, I have a few women in there, but I read what I had available to me. And so anything that I could fall into my hands, I took it and I found something I would love about it. And so I would say that probably those out of it all. And then, of course, the Bible. I read the King James Bible from start to finish. I've at least 3 times. I'm very deeply religious. It wasn't something I was necessarily raised with. My parents had a faith. But my father actually was an engineer on the Apollo 11 moon project.
Oh, wow.
My mother was one of the first women to take physics at North Texas. And they would ask questions, lots and lots of questions. And so one of the things my mother liked to do to us is she would get us on, and you'd be reading your little story for nighttime. And I'm an 8-year-old. And she goes, this is a book. What if we're characters in a book and God just shuts the book? Will we exist? And then she would just walk off and I'd be laying there all night going, oh my gosh, are we doomed? Is it are we going to just disappear? I would have an existential crisis at 8 years old. She would ask the craziest questions. You always had to think. And so my faith is found through a personal interaction with the divine. It is me finding that and reading that King James Bible. And it is the rhythm of that language that is so incredibly important. When we talk about the rhythm of language, it is found in that King James Bible. And it is one of the things when you look at repetition in rhythm in prose, it is one of the things that AI fails at the most. And it's the reason that it cannot recognize that repetition. When you say, I want to be with you, I'd love to be with you, but I can't be with you because of Sir Harold, it's that rhythm that you have there, they'll look at it and AI will say, this is a repetitive form. You shouldn't be using these words over and over again. So I encourage everybody to go back to the 1800s, make sure you use all the repetitive words you can, and then just fling it around like Edgar Allan Poe, who is another huge, I love poetry also. And so Edgar Allan Poe is another one that came in. So I love alliteration, and it sometimes gets me in trouble. And people point at it and laugh and say purple prose. And I say, I don't care, because someday the Poe people will rise up and we will take back the earth from all of the Hemingway folks in Jesus' name.
I love that. You've got a very deep feeling for the way that you write and the reason that you write. I like that. And that's one thing that I want to do too, eventually is read the Bible all the way through. Now I've read a good bit of it, but I haven't gone from beginning to end.
Well, here's what you really want to do. If you're wanting to read the Bible, and I would encourage you to do this, you have to understand the structure. It's actually four witnessed accounts of the life of Christ. That's actually where you start. Start there. Start at that little beginning. Pick one of those books and read it. Just pick one if you want to. Don't pick all of them. Just pick one. That's an account of the life of Christ. If you want to really get into it, you get with Luke, because he wrote 2 of them. He wrote the account of the life of Christ and what happened right afterwards. So that's Luke and Acts. Then you go back. Now, the books that are there because anything that Jesus mentions is in the bibliography. That's why it's called the Bible. So all the other books are just things that Jesus mentioned. So if you start with the gospel, then you go back, I'd like to see what he read too. Now you go back and you read all the rest of it and you go, this is what Jesus read. And then you go, I wonder what the other people thought about it. Then you go to the letters of the apostles that's at the end. That's just how to build a church and what you ought to be doing. That's how you read the Bible. You start with the gospels, go back to that beginning and read the books he wrote or read, and then read what other people had to say about it. It makes it a lot more interesting.
And I think the biggest chunk I've read was probably Genesis, and then towards the end of the Bible, like Revelation, stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
cool. The cool stuff like the Nephilim things. Oh, it's so cool. Like you get all this
yeah,
weird stuff.
I
Yeah,
like
my
the
parents.
philosophy.
Oh, it's just incredible. Actually, when you're reading, when you start to realize, you think it's boring because it's been sitting in your grandma's house. You're like, oh
Mm,
man, it's been there all this time.
yeah,
No, think about it as a sacred tome. When you start realizing this is deep magic, bro, this is deep stuff here. These are 2,000-year-old words. You have some words that actually go back much further in the oral tradition, the Book of Job, which has been around since time. And wow, we're talking about like the Sumerian times. And actually, we see reference to it in the books of Ur. And so when we see that and we say, oh my gosh, these are sacred texts that come from the ancients of days, and I want to look at this stuff, and maybe there's something in there that would really be interesting. It is just as fascinating as any book I've read. I've read the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I love it. I
oh
love the
wow.
Egyptian, Tibetan Book of the Dead, the sacred texts of the Vedas, the Elder Eddas of Norse mythology. It is
Hmm.
just as important as any of those books. And when you start seeing it as this incredible sacred text from way back when, where the deeps of the ancients are calling to you, and you hold this book in your hands, and it's like, holy cow, I'm touching somebody's brain from
Yeah,
6,000 years ago. Then you realize it's actually pretty cool.
yeah, absolutely. Because I think people get hung up on the language,
Yeah.
and I mean, I would agree with like the fact that it's not the easiest thing with modern language to read, but if you take the time and kind of like kind of what you've done, um, research the language and
Well,
get an
it's okay.
idea of.
It's okay to start with something that's easier too. You can actually go and say, okay, I want to look at the New Revised Standard Version, or find something that appeals to you first. If you want to go and read it that way, it makes it easier for you. You can go back and read the King James. The reason to read the King James is because of the alliteration and the rhythm and the poetry of it.
I
But to
like
read
that.
that whole Bible, if you want to find something that appeals to you, there are so many interpretations out there now, and you can find one that you love. Then you go back to the King James, because this is the basis of Shakespearean poetry, of almost everything that our civilization is centered around over 400 years. And so when we look at those rhythms and those forms, and especially allusions in general idioms in English, we go
Mm.
back to the King James, and that really makes a basis for things that can be shared 400 years from now.
There's a guy that I don't remember his name, but he's a preacher on TikTok, and he kind of tries to hit with a modern language. Like
Yeah.
it's not one that I would read because it's very, like, I guess you would call it woke. But it's called like the woke Bible or whatever. And
No,
so if
really.
you're of like a straight up kind of new, I don't know the generation, not my generation, the one after. I was
Yeah.
born in 90. But
Oh,
it
baby.
yeah, exactly. If you're a teenager, and somewhat maybe up to like 21, it's just kind of funny to hear him read it. It's like I don't know the words to it, but if you ever get a chance, look at the woke Bible. And the reason I'm saying it is because the guy is a very traditional kind of conservative preacher, but he's also like, hey, this language isn't something I understand. It's very hip, but it makes total sense as far as the word of God. He's like, just because it's in this new language, I do say that I give my because he's very educated as far as um, religion goes, and he's like, this works as far as how it translates, but it's very new language. I can't remember the name of the Bible, but I have to
Oh,
look it up.
there are several great actually graphic representations too. If you love graphic novels, I'd actually bought one back. Geez, in the 1990s, they actually had some great versions of it. You can find the older ones too. You can also find some of the newer ones. It's a
Yeah,
story like anything else. It's a story of a civilization and of a people. And so when we start doing that, and I love studying mythology. I love world religions. I go back and I do that. This is the one that spoke to my heart, spoke to me internally, because I met the divine through my interaction with the Bible. But in my research with all of the world languages and all of the world's mythologies, you find a trace of the divine, of God, in almost everything. And you can look back at these things
oh
and you
yeah,
can see it. So there's certainly nothing wrong with finding the book that you're able to understand first. For it
for
does no
sure.
good if you can't understand it. So I always encourage my folks to say, hey, go ahead and read it in the language that is appealing to you. Then we go back to that King James, because there is something so appealing about knowing the language that was spoken when my mother lay dying. And it's one of the reasons I became a EMT. She was with me, and I kept her at home with me. I didn't want her to die. away from me. And I knew how to take care of her, and I knew how to take care of the oxygen bottles and everything. And she lived with me until she passed. And I flung open the window as my mother was passing. I had one of my church ladies with me, you know, because I'm actually a preacher's wife as well. And so I said, Miss Tommy Faye, sweetest little lady. She's absolutely the one you think of when you think of a country woman, a fine country woman, tall, stunning looking. I would always make these gorgeous cakes, and she had to come over for my mother's passing. She's like, Becky, she's going. And so I looked at my mother's passing, and I could tell. I flung open the window, and I hollered to my son, who's out in the pasture. I said, Danny, come quick. Your grandmother's going home to Jesus. He runs inside. From memory, he reads the 23rd Psalm. He speaks it. The Lord is my shepherd, shall not want. And if I learned it in the NIV or some other we may not understand it, but immediately the language flowed out of him. And you could watch the future touching the past as her spirit leaves this earth. It is the words that have surrounded us since 400 years ago. These people, they know it. And there's something that's incredibly comforting to know that we share that language and that poetry and that song, that it has not left this earth just because people don't understand. But we can learn it too.
That's what's tattooed on my forearm right here. Is Psalms 23:4. Though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I fear no evil. Though I was with you, thy staff. I love that.
Dude, you're with me now. You're with me.
I absolutely love that.
You know, we go through those valleys quite a bit sometimes.
So. My father, he did a lot of. It was back when I was young. That he was a firefighter in EMT, but it was a good time, and he said there was no better thing, like as far as the value he got from his work. There's definitely those hard moments, and that's kind of where I got my fear for a lot of stupid things I see people do anymore, like seat belts. I know, very important. My dad showed, I had the school in front of me to not do those stupid things, and I'm glad I got to see some of what he did, because it's not necessarily the fun stuff that you want to see, but it sure helps you make better decisions.
It does. It really, real life is the font of all true knowledge. And I say it's wonderful to read a book. It should give you that desire to go and experience something in your own life. And you can't do everything. You can't go out and be, Treasure Planet or whatever. You might not ever be able to sail among the stars with the coolest, ship ever. But you certainly can do the thing that you can lay your hands on. You say, I read about this. I would love to try this thing. Then go and do it. You would be amazed at what changes your life when you lay your hands on the thing that you can do, that one thing that you desire. You might not be able to do it all. Do that one thing and do it well.
I think that's a great thing to say, because I think a lot of people may be scared of that, or they don't want to see certain things. And I understand that to a point, but also if you keep yourself shielded from reality, it's a whole nother a demon, if you will.
You're correct. I think that, and I'll say this is a story that happened to me just recently, and John knows about it, and a few others too, and I think you do as well. My niece recently passed away. I loved her so much. And she was part of my life. She lived with us, and I accepted her. She was mine, even though she was from my outlaws, but she was still mine. I didn't care. And that child came to me when she needed help. And she had a very bad epilepsy, and she passed away in my house. So I was home. I did not see it, didn't hear anything, but my son came home, he found her. Because of my training as an EMT, because of the death that I've seen, and it's hard to face death. It's hard to look at it. But because of that, I jumped back there and I immediately grabbed a hold of her and we started CPR. I knew what to do.
Right.
We knew how to do this. And because we did do it, it didn't save her. So most of the time, you're not going to make a save on CPR. You can some. You should always try. Yeah. And so learn CPR if you haven't. That's my thing I give to you right now, sweetheart. I give that to you. Go learn CPR, y'all.
And you can be certified easily.
Yes, very easily. And because of that, I knew we had done everything we could.
Yeah.
I also had a teeny tiny heart attack right in the middle of it. I was like,
gosh.
Oh, yeah, I had to go to the hospital afterward. But it gave me so much comfort to know that we had done everything that we could. That my son was there, that we had done all that we could, and not only that, but she was surrounded by love. She was in a better place. She was able to know that she was comforted and loved by the people who adored her. And that was my child to me. And
I like what you said about your mom when she was passing. You said she's going home to Jesus. Like, I think there's nothing more comforting as a religious person myself than to think of death that way. It helps to cope with it, and not only that, it's what I truly believe.
Thank you, because it's really tough sometimes. We live in a world where people go, well, that must be fake. If they really saw the world the way it was, they wouldn't believe these things. If they really knew what was out there, they wouldn't believe in love and faith and hope. If they knew how evil the world could be, they wouldn't believe these things. I know how evil the world can be.
Oh.
I've been there. I know, and I'm not going to go into it, but I've been a victim of abuse, and I've had dark thoughts. The days when the valley of the shadow really is the valley of the shadow, and the sun doesn't shine, but it's just like the day when you looked up and you saw that sun go behind the moon, and you thought to yourself, that's not coming out again. It's gone. It's just gone.
Yes.
And I looked up with her, and actually my niece was with me. That was one of the last things we did together. And we looked up, and it was just gone. You couldn't see it. I couldn't find anything there. She took a photo, and she said, I got it, Becky. I got it. And I was like, and I said, what? She said, Aunt Becky, I got it on film. And there it was, the sun with the corona around it. It was still there. We just couldn't see it.
That's cool.
Get dark. Things get very dark sometimes, and we don't know what's out there. You just always remember the fact that you looked down one day and the sun was on your hands, and your skin felt warm, and the world was good. It's still there, despite the evils of man, despite the heartaches, despite the depression and the risk. It is still a beautiful world, and the sun still shines, and one day you will see it again.
John Palladino, what's up, man? Thank you for popping in. I'm finishing up his second book right now, man. It's absolutely, it's grimdark. It's all the things I love.
Dude, John Morrow is here. If Dr. Morrow is here, he would be all excited because he loves your book, John Palladino.
Yeah, he does, and I do too. It's such a fun thing to find those authors that you really, really connect with. He said, I saw this happening, and I had to show it because I see our show on Twitter all the time and appreciate your communicating with me. Oh, I love that. Yes. Hail John Palladino, Prince of Darkness. Yes. So tell us about your book series that you have out, The Watcher of the Damned.
Oh, wow. Okay. So one day I got sick. Like I told you, actually I have a condition. It's called fibromuscular dysplasia, and it makes blockages where you wouldn't have a blockage normally. And so I have like 3 blockages, and my blood pressure go way, way up, woo, 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 go way, way down. Woo, woo, woo. Well, I also found out that I was losing my eyesight at the same time, and I'm like, oh snap, I can't do anything. I want to go play Final Fight Fires. I want to go have a good time. All I can do is sit here. Well, there's only so many times you can play Fallout on sponge mode before you just end up really. I mean, I love Fallout. I'm not gonna lie. I played that whole series. I played all the Elder Scrolls, but there's only so much in any games you can play when you're used to being in real life.
Yeah.
I love you, John. And so I was just bored, and I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, oh snap, I'm bored. A vision came to me of a man chained to a gate, and he can't escape. And he's in a dark, dark place, and he's addicted to drugs that he doesn't want to be addicted to, and his life is hard. And I had to write it. And then I had to write the hope that followed. And the whole story came to me from beginning to the end. I could see the beginning, and I could see the end, and I could see points in between, just like a map leading somewhere. And I was like, holy cow, I've got to write some books. And so I started writing. I'd never written a novel before. I've written lots of poetry, and I've written lots of articles. In another life, I also was an investigative reporter. And we're not going to talk about that here because I had to go do it under a different name. But I wrote those books, and I was like, they just came to me. And I know that they're probably have lots of errors or something. I've had wonderful editors and things like that, but it was done in the middle of COVID. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not. I actually released the whole series because I'd gotten a bad diagnosis on something. I'm like, well, I could be dead tomorrow. I better go ahead and fix this and put it out there. So I did. And then it was like, oh, snap. I forgot there's like a place where I left a page breakout or something. It was like, oh, no. So I'm probably going to put out a second edition. So if anybody wants to look at it and say, oh, I found an error, you tell me, and I'll put that in the second edition, and we'll credit you in the back.
Oh, very cool.
And yeah, that's a fun way to do it. And that way they like you instead of just go, oh, you're a loser. But,
oh, gosh.
But I'd never done it before. The whole series came to me from start to finish. I wrote the whole thing in a series of episodes. We swung it around. It turned into 6 books. And I was like, okay, and it was literally done back to back, pretty much 6 books in 2 years. Boom, boom, boom. We did it. And I say we because I have a wonderful, group of people working with me. I have my daughter, who is my cover artist, and I have my son, who's one of my editors. Steve Black is one of my editors. Art David Tallis, who was editor on the first series, and Cynthia Davis, who helped me do the designs. And I also illustrated it. So I had 125 of these illustrations, which if you're losing your eyesight, it's not as easy as it sounds. And so I
Right.
did all these illustrations and whooped them out. I'm not the greatest. Y'all already know that. I don't pretend to be like, Aaron Lepresti, who's so fantastic, or all of these other people at Neutron Board. He's just wonderful. We have so many great artists. Always look to your artist, guys. Your artist or your lifeblood when you're an author. My daughter did the color work on my front of my stuff, and here it is right here. I love my child's work. Look at what my child did. I don't even have to put it on the fridge anymore. I just put it on my book. So she does, because she's so much better at color than I am. But so we got all of those illustrated. Oh, yay. I love that cover so much. It's one of my favorites. Oh, yay. It's there. Hooray.
There's some other ones too.
And
I haven't got them all over here, but I've got.
Oh, dog, really? Did. Oh, yeah. That's so amazing. So this book just comes to me, and I've got to write it. And I was praying about it one day. I'm like, the world's looking kind of crazy. I've got the 6 books finished, and I was praying about, what do I do? How do I get this done? It seems like an insurmountable task when you're starting a series or a book. And God just says, write the series, finish your books. That's it. And I'm like, that has become such an obsession with me. I feel I need to do this. I don't want this series to be unfinished. I am already halfway through the second series, which is Watcher the Damned Wanderer. The first series is Watcher the Damned Watcher. And then we have Watcher the Damned Wanderer, which is the second series. And I'm already halfway through that. And I have picked out, in the event something happened to me, I already have my writer picked out. It's my son, Daniel Snow, who is Anvil #1 for A Fleet of Thesis. And he is intimate with all the details. I already have a very detailed arc. The books are actually written already in my head. There's already a very strict way that it must go. This is not going to end up Lucas like some things. There is a specific ending to this series that must happen. And so it's definitive. So I do have that already in mind. And one of the things that I wanted to do in this, I actually found out that every 3 books is its own series, basically. The first 3 books are the world building series. It's the backstory. Basically, The whole thing's like a prologue. So some people love the slower pace on it and the world building and all the characterizations. And that's where it's found, is right there. Everything you want to know about that book is going to be found in that first 3 books. Then you have the second 3 books, which can also stand alone. And they're the ones that got nominated for the Prometheus Awards. All 3 of them, the second series. And that's actually the 4, 5, and 6. And they are the spy series. It actually goes into the creation of the revolution that they're trying to attempt. And then we have the third series right now, which the third set of 3 in Watcher of the Damned Wanderer. And that 3 books is the road series. They're traveling, they're moving, and it becomes a road trip where they're literally going from one point to the next point, and they meet all the factions along the way, and they find all the different drones and things that are out there, this tech that's still available. And basically you've got Texas 1881 versus the technology of the future, cowboys versus drones. And a genetically enhanced world against people that have been genetically mutated. And so you have these groups and these factions going against each other. And I would say for that group of it, I've loved writing the road series so much, because I utilized all those hours I spent on Fallout New Vegas. I utilized them so much because now I can use all my faction work and put it right in there. And I don't want it to be derivative, but if you ever want to just play a faction game, you've got to go play Fallout New Vegas, because it's totally on point with all of it.
That's the one I haven't played yet. I actually just downloaded it. Yeah, I have to go check that one out. I've played most of the Fallouts, and I enjoy them. They're not my favorite, but I think that's just because, I don't know. I started playing when I was younger, and I love the story and I love the gameplay, but I think I did like the gameplay. I don't like the gameplay as much in the newer one that I've played, but I'm really excited to start New Vegas. So I'm excited for that.
What's your favorite series?
4.
Which one?
Fallout 4, I think it is. It's the one
what's your favorite game series, though?
My favorite game series would probably be... No, it's definitely Far Cry.
Oh, really? See, and I have not played Far Cry. It is the one I have not played. I played Halo. I played Bethesda. I played Dragon Age. When I do game, I'm deep into gaming. I love to go into everything, find all the Easter eggs, like to find all the secrets. Doom is my jam. I've been gaming since 1974. I had an Atari with Pong on it. It was the coolest thing. And then I really started getting into it with Doom and Descent and that whole series of games on the PC. And so for me, gaming is influential because it is interactive storytelling. When it's done right, just literally pulls you into these worlds. And so it's sort of, I would say Fallout's my favorite gaming series just because of the storytelling more than the gameplay. It's the storytelling itself. And then I would say I probably would go with Elder Scrolls. So once again, I know that's really cliche. Halo was super influential for me though, as far as a gaming franchise. It was my first real introduction to console gaming, and I loved it. I absolutely adored it, and I would honestly, that whole thing, that Cortana and John has always been a better love story than Twilight. And if you want to know what my romance is in my books, it's based on that kind of stuff. It's none of this mushy business. As far as I know, I don't know, John, what would you say? John's read it. People feel like they get tricked into it because it does have a heavy romance theme, but it's not the center of it. And it's considered masculine enough that other people who read it thought it was problematic because it was too masculine. So I guess I should be proud of that because it got yeeted from a contest because of that.
So I'm actually, and I think John agrees with me because I've seen a couple of his videos that say this. I've seen all his videos, but a couple that say this, that he's not, he is somewhat of a fan of a romantic part of a book, which honestly, I think any man that's like, oh no, romance. Look, we're human, right? I think anything that has romance, at least not. There are certain books I think that I wouldn't enjoy just because they're so in the middle of romance. But being romantic or having love in your life or finding that one is a human trait, and I think having those as an aspect in my books is never a bad thing.
Oh no, that's cool. And I didn't want people to be off-put by it. And that's one of the reasons why actually I'm Rebecca Snow in my life. But it sounded like a romance writer. This is the perfect romance writer named Rebecca Snow. It's like, have these flowy leaves, everything like that. Look at that. I look like a romance writer. And so I didn't want to throw people off. So I chose RH because it's my initials. It also fits better on the cover. And it really seemed to hit a note with readers. And so I was like, okay, cool. So a lot of people don't know if I'm a dude or a gal because they're reading. And evidently my voice is more masculine, I guess, in the books than I would expect. I don't know. A lot of people think that I'm a male writer until they look in the back and they see which I don't mind that at all. My writing styles, the people I've loved so much, Bradbury and H.G. Wells and the others, their voices are distinctive, and I have a tendency to imitate that. So that's probably what AI picks up on when it says, "Oh, this is a male writer." But so the romance is different because I was told I have one of my editors, Melanie Callahan, and she's actually Stephen Black is my current editor with the series, and he's excellent, just does a great job. Art David Tallis literally pulled it out of the fire. He's my first series before he got another job. And Melanie Callahan is my consultant. And so I didn't know what to do. I was literally trapped in the house. It's COVID. Nobody can get out. Nobody can do anything. I called self-publishing services. Melanie is the one that picks up my thing. And she has been with me since the beginning. She said, this is how you do it because you've got these illustrations. You're going to have to go through certain formatting. You've got to do the stuff. And she literally saved my life. And she was the one who told me this is not a romance because it does not follow the formula. It doesn't have the elements that would allow it to be put in as a romance. It's too much guns shooting and lots of fist fights. There's wrestling. We're not wrestling, and then there's wrestling. There's wrestling. We do have a Texas death match in there. It's called the Purgatory Death Match. I know my wrestlers. I watched Mid-South when I was younger, and I dare anybody, don't talk down about my hacksaw Jim Duggan.
There it is.
Oh, Bud, he's like awesome. Him and then all of those great guys from that time period. I just love watching that stuff. So I thought, what is Texas? Texas always has wrestling in it somewhere. So you've got to have great luchadors, El Santo, which if you have in Texas, we do have the Mexican wrestling that comes up and works its way through. And so I wanted to put those worlds in there. So it doesn't fit in with the romantic genre at all.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I love all those aspects. Those aspects are great. And I think a lot of people will be attracted to that. And I hope a lot more people start picking it up because I think what you're doing is wonderful. And as far as like the Iron Age, I'm glad that you kind of asked about it, Caden. And that video he's going to send you. I know I kind of got off topic for a second, but John will send you a video of it. It's really cool. And I'm excited that you came on here and you were talking about your books and what has inspired you. The kids are being somewhat crazy, so I was going to ask a couple last questions. Well, I'll definitely have you back on because I want our conversation to go a lot farther than this next time.
So sweet.
So I'm sorry that I'm going to have to cut it a little bit short, but I do have a couple things that I wanted to talk to you about.
You have life. That's awesome.
I was telling RH before this, my channel kind of like it blasted off at first, and not as far as like views and anything, but I was doing a lot more. Scheduling has been so tough with the kids lately, and like I hope to get back to the number of chats that I was doing at the beginning, but it's just been really hard lately. But I'm trying to fit them in there, and it'll get back to where it was. But the last kind of thing
Look
that
at
I
my
wanted
eyes first, Matt. Look at my eyes. Look, I'm your mom now. Okay, let's see. I am the mom. You're doing a fantastic job. You have overcome so much. You do not need to look. You have done everything you can do and more. You do not need to feel in any way, shape, or form like you have anything to apologize for. This channel is still alive. Look at that chat out there. Look at those little people. Oh, look at them. They're so cute. Look at all those names. One of the things about it is your chat loves you. They love you for a reason. It's not because you're just always there pushing content in their face. They love you because you're Matt. Stay Matt. Do what you have to do. The fact that you told me I need to go be with my kids, I think that's just the cutest thing.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
I'm proud of what you're doing. I think it's awesome.
And thank you guys in the chat too. But I did want to get to a couple more things real quick. As far as I heard you say something about a sci-fi by Mark Twain. Would you tell me the name of that book again?
That is a Yankee. A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. I've got to get it right. It is a long name. A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. It is a time travel. I believe it is an isekai, where he is literally thrust into a different world. And this is written in the 1800s. And he moves back in time to all of his modern stuff that he's got in the 1800s and goes back to King Arthur's Court.
That's incredible.
Oh, it's amazing. And in fact, it's very reminiscent of Army of the Dead with Ash and everything else. And if you love that story, this is actually the basis for Army of the Dead and that whole trilogy.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
And it may not be directly attributed, but anybody who's ever read a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court knows where that idea originates, and it sort of originates with that. Now, Army of the Dead takes it a step further in making it to where there's a lot of undead and the magic and the cool stuff. Yeah. And so that's where that differentiates. But yes, if you want to say that first time traveling isekai, you can go back to Jules Verne, of course, and you can also go to H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. But Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, as far as I know, is probably one of the first time travel books that was actually written with the intent of saying, here's a modern time and the ancient times. It's a great book.
That was one of the things I wanted to get to was your sci-fi recommendations. So it's Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, and I haven't read anything by Mark Twain, so that sounds exciting.
Yes, no, Mark Twain is fantastic. The voice that he has is absolutely incredible. I love his voice. I can't stress enough. Read Howard. I love Howard. I know that he may be, some people feel like he's overdone in this genre. I don't, because I believe he needs to be read. Of course, the key of it all is Tolkien. Just my aspiration when I started writing this is I wanted to be able to describe things like Tolkien. And I love descriptions. So if somebody's like, oh, I'm tired of this, do go back and you read about those ants, bro. I read the Silmarillion when I was 12. I loved it. That should be a warning to anyone. And I love to describe things. And one of the reasons why is because of Tolkien's fantastic work. But also as a person who is losing my eyesight, I want to be able to remember what something looks like. I want to remember what it felt like to be there. When I am lying in my bed and I am passing away, somebody can put in an audiobook of me and I can see the world I love so much. Everything I describe is something that's near me. Everything in the book, when I describe it, I actually look at an object. I'm going to be making a geocaching trail for the locations.
Oh, yeah.
These scenes are real. The objects that I use frequently are real. They are real things. I have here actually a scarf that is in the book itself. It's my little bandana. And,
incredible.
It's actually from foragingtexas.com, and it's Dr. Mark Meriwether Vorderbruggen. And he worked with some wazoo.com to create this survivalist bandana. I also used to be a Boy Scouts of America survival camp, and actually taught that to my boys back in the 1990s. And so I love survivalism, and I love living off the land. So it's part of the story as well, and there's things in it. But the things that I use in the book are real. A lot of times they're real objects.
It's fantastic to read a book and like get to know the author as well.
Yeah, and so if you look at those descriptions, that's me loving the places that I've seen and trying to share that with you as an audience. the beauty of what it means to look across the prairie and you see the sunrise and it hits the grass and it looks like an ocean and the ocean is waving towards you. And it's like suddenly you feel what the freedom means to be standing in that place in time, to be one with the earth and the sky. And nobody can ever take that away from you.
No. I love that. There's so many more things that I want to talk to you about, but this chat unfortunately has to kind of close up. I'm so sorry. I do have to get to it. The kids are being a little nuts. So
no,
look,
I've got
guys.
Storm watch, so it's okay. I've got a new one probably rolling in, so I'm gonna have to watch that. So.
Well, be careful either way. But thank you so much. I'm gonna get you on back like very quickly because I want to talk to you about. So I have like 10 more questions that I wanted to ask you. I didn't expect this, but thank you so much for just chatting with me for a little bit. And like I said, we'll have a part 2 because I have like over half the questions that I wanted to ask you still.
No, you're fantastic, and I want to say first of all, thank you so much, guys. If you came tonight, or if you're watching this in the future, we love you so much. You're the reason we're here in the first place. It's not just the interaction between him and me. It's the interaction between us and you.
Yes.
And if you find this somewhere down the road, it's 2 years later or whatever, this is still for you. I love you. You're going to make it. Whatever it is you're doing now, I want you to go and I want you to live your life on Legendary. There is no reason for you to become the person you've always dreamed of being. Go live your life on Legendary. And we will
That's epic. That is epic. What a wonderful leaving statement. So thank you so much, RH Snow. Thank you for y'all that was here in the chat, and in the future there will be a part 2 of me and RH Snow conversation. Look for it. I'll have it on Twitter. Until then, we'll see you guys later. Love you guys. Thank you so much, RH.
Thank you. You're awesome.